This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com. The only
space. Images begin to appear. Images of warriors and Hulksters and things shaped in the stars, or whatever his monologue was before WrestleMania 6. Welcome everyone to this month's journey through the Looking Glass. I'm your co-host Scott Criscuolo. Hello. It is March, which means it is Mania month. I'm not even going to joke and pick another. I don't even know what March. I don't know what WCW's March show was. Slamboree? No. I have no idea.
Uncensored, I think.
Maybe uncensored. Let's jump right in. Here's our man, Thunder from Down Under. Hello, Dave Hall. How are you?
I'm doing well, Scott. It's good to talk to you again. It's always good to do this, to sit with you and catch up across the globe. And I'm excited. You said it. It's WrestleMania month, and I'm going to be honest. I'm actually looking forward to this year's WrestleMania. I really am. It's been a while since I've had a bit of I can't wait for it to get here. It's been a long time, so I'm excited this year.
Yeah, I am too. Not every match I'm into. Obviously, I'm a big Cody guy. I've always been a Cody guy. It was the only reason I enjoyed. He was one of the few reasons I really enjoyed the early years of AEW. So I want the story to end. I want him to beat Roman. The tag is going to be nice. I kind of wish, no disrespect to Sami Zayn, but I kind of was hoping for someone else to wrestle Gunther. I don't think Sami Zayn's beating Gunther. I think that streak's going to continue because that's not the guy to beat. I would rather have seen Chad Gable or someone that, like, Sami Zayn doesn't need. Well, we're not going to get into a main event discussion. Let's save that for a couple of weeks. But I am looking forward to Cody and Roman. And it's going to be interesting 2 days. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually kind of digging the stand and deliver card too, which is pretty good. So anyway, I agree.
And as the Aussie boy, as the resident Aussie on the Place to Be network, I'm honestly, I'm looking forward to Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. I think it's going to be a good match.
I am too. I hope Rhea wins.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't think Becky needs it. No, Rhea's amazing. Incidentally, Dave,
Rhea's in her own class. Rhea doesn't need it either. She can lose and withstand it now.
Oh, totally. But we don't need Becky to win another match.
I think there's more they can do with Rhea moving forward.
Totally. I think honestly, they should just keep it on Rhea until. This is my opinion. I'm probably wrong. I think they should keep it on Rhea until Jade Cargill is ready. And Jade Cargill should beat her. That's my opinion, but that's just me.
That'd be a good match, yes.
Incidentally, Dave, to give everyone a frame of reference for you, okay? Obviously, Elimination Chamber was in Perth. How far are you from Perth?
That's the other side of the country from me. That's like East Coast, West Coast. So
okay.
York,
so it's like me and
New York,
it's like
New York,
me here,
San Francisco.
Okay, there you go. All right, so not close.
No, it's a 3.5 hour plane trip if you go. And unfortunately, I couldn't get out there. My aunt, my cousins went over. They didn't tell me they were going. If I'd known they were heading out, I probably would have been able to sneak a trip in with them. I probably could have, because it's not just going. It's accommodation. It's the trip. It's all that. If I knew in advance my cousins and my aunt were going, I would have probably been able to sneak a ride with them and tag along. But unfortunately, it was just a bit too far for me this year.
Yeah, I think that Australia will end up being a great secondary pay-per-view place. I can even see it being a Money in the Bank place. I don't know if they could ever do a Rumble. Maybe they could do a Rumble. I can't see them doing. Sorry, go ahead.
The advantage you've got in Australia is the Royal Rumble, normally on the last weekend of January, right? in Australia, quite often we end up having a public holiday on the last weekend of January. So you actually run the opportunity where you could stream it live, have a live audience in a suitable time slot for the US, and then do Raw in a similar way. Like you could do them live, back to back live showings that were going to appear in the US live. But that's the one advantage you have at the Rumble time, is it just happens to fall around a public holiday in Australia. But I hear where you're coming from outside of that. Like time framing, it just doesn't suit. You can't do Mania in that way. You've got to, like they did with Elimination Chamber, it's on at a different time slot to suit the different audiences. But I'll say this. I sort of one of the other reasons I didn't go to Elimination Chamber is, as much as it would have been good to see Rhea live as an Aussie, we all knew she was going to win. We all knew that there was never any doubt. But I think if they'd sent Rock and Roman down here, I think there would have been a lot more people getting on planes and going as far as they could to see them. I think they missed the boat and the opportunity. There was a lot of seats empty in that stadium in Perth. There are a lot of empty seats from an Australian perspective. If you brought Rock and Roman out, I guarantee they would have sold that place out.
I think the problem is WrestleMania, and I've said this on other shows. We'll get into it. We do have topics tonight, folks. We didn't go in cold. WrestleMania and SummerSlam will not be able to be in venues that are not in North America. I just don't think that that WWE wants to lose the North American audience. You can't, because our good friend, my number one here at the PTB Wrestling Network, Callum McDougall, would love Mania in the UK, and I can't see it happening. I can't. They're not going to cut off the North American market, because you're not going to get that many people for a week of stuff in another country. I just don't see it. If it happens, all the power to it. I think that'd be awesome. I'm just thinking logistically, I don't think it's going to ever happen.
I just think it comes down to what I said before. It's about timing. If you do it in the UK, if you want it at that prime time audience, prime time crowd coming into the venue, you can't show it live in the US. They show that was evident at SummerSlam 92. They had to show it on delay in the US, and even all the Raws that take place in the UK, the television, it's got to be shown on delay in the US. They don't want it for Mania or SummerSlam. They want it. They would want it live. I think if they could do it at a time slot in another country at a time slot that still allowed them to show it in the peak period in the US, I think they would really consider doing it. But there aren't many countries that you can do that in. That's why I said Royal Rumble, you could do that in Australia, but you couldn't do it for WrestleMania or SummerSlam. It just doesn't fit the time period.
No, you can't you can't. I had no problem with. I didn't watch the Chamber live because I wasn't getting up at 5:00 in the morning here. You can't have a WrestleMania start at 5 a.m. It's just not going to fly. It's a shame. The UK,
in Australia, this is where I'm coming from. Like when these events are shown in the US, we're seeing them at like 11 a.m. in Australia. Now, the reason the Royal Rumble will work is that's the middle of our summer holiday period, and as I said, public holidays on top of that, where everyone's going to be off work. So you could run an event at 11 a.m. in Australia and get a capacity crowd because people are already off work and don't have to go to work and can have the next day off, and you can make a big spectacle of it, and it can be shown live in the US. You can't do that with Mania and stuff. That's why it'll always be in the US.
Right. I know, I agree with that. I love shows overseas. I remember way back and I mentioned this on Main Event a few episodes ago, when JR and I did an episode of the Place to Be podcast the day the network launched. So we're looking at, February of 2014. One of the things him and I said that eventually would be cool is if they get out of their comfort zone of every Sunday at 8 o'clock, they could do shows overseas. We were thinking more house shows and stuff. We were thinking nothing about pay-per-views and stuff. And now look, fast forward 10 years, and, we're doing shows in Australia. We got a pay-per-view in the beginning of May in France. We have a pay-per-view at the end of August in Berlin. I mean, it's crazy. I call them pay-per-views. I'm sorry, I'm old school. I can't call them PLEs or whatever the hell they call them. They're pay-per-views. Sorry, it's just the way it goes. So
we're too old to change.
Yeah, who needs it?
I'm too old. I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Get off my lawn. All right. So tonight it is March, as we said, and we've done 2 exemplary episodes of Through the Looking Glass in 2022 and a year ago with WrestleMania scenario. So please go back into the catalog. Our shows, for those that are brand new, I haven't said this in a while. For those that are brand new, welcome. Our shows are not episodic, meaning they don't go in order in terms of like you don't miss the early one for the next one. We do different topics. So if you want to go back, please listen to them all. They're all really good. I think you'll really enjoy them. We thank everyone for their support. They post on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel. And you don't have to listen to them in order. Listen to any order anytime you want. So if you want to listen for WrestleMania month, listen to our previous episodes of Mania, please feel free. So anyway, so tonight on this month's show, we have 3 scenarios again, 2 rebooks and an inventing, meaning we're going to take 2 WrestleManias that were not. One is solid, one is terrible, and we're going to fix them for you in another universe. And then another one, which I love doing. This is one of my favorite things that Dave and I do. I love going to a year that a show didn't happen and make one. And we're going to do that tonight. We'll do that one last. So, Dave, why don't you get us started? What's our first journey through the TARDIS? Where are we going?
I think we're going to kick things off where it all began. We're going to jump all the way back to 85. And we're going to have a look at the original WrestleMania card. And the reason we're going to do that is it's quite well known. While the WrestleMania card, the first one, was a big investment, and if you listen to all the backstage stuff, a potential gamble, financial gamble, gambling the future of the company on it, it really was nothing more than a glorified house show. MSG show. The mothership of WWE shows was MSG. It was just a glorified house show. They just put a couple of big matches all on the card, but there was a lot of the card, a lot of competitors who were employed by the company who were not booked at WrestleMania. It was not done as the highlight of the year, and so when we see WrestleMania today, you have months and months of build-up to culminate in specific storylines. Everyone wants to be on the card. They do their best to get as many workers on as they can. So we're going to go back to WrestleMania 1, and that is essentially what we're going to do. We're going to make it the super card. We're going to just put our heads together and go, there are guys missing off the show. How would they fit in? What would we do with them? There are some matches on the original WrestleMania that really were house show matches. What do we do with those competitors? Do we use them in other ways? Do we keep the feature matches the same? These are all questions we're going to answer as we go back and we rebook the original WrestleMania.
I like that. And a lot of people, I don't have a problem with it. The first WrestleMania is perfectly fine. It is a glorified house show. We all know that. It doesn't become the real Mania until obviously the following year, WrestleMania 2, when we have the 3 venues. And then, of course, WrestleMania 3 is my favorite of all time. And that's the one that gave us what we have now, in my opinion. But Mania 1 was not a bad show, but Mania 1 could have been tweaked a little. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people are not the fans of the tag of the main event. They're very pro Piper and think that Mr. T should have been nowhere near the ring. But I think that we could make an even better show than we have. I think a lot of people also complain there's too many jobbers on this show. You know, the Executioner, Matt Bourne, although I don't consider Matt Bourne a jobber by any stretch, but there are some guys that are off this show. Where's Magnificent Morocco? You know? So that is what I think we need to do, is we need to tweak WrestleMania 1 and make it, like you said, a WrestleMania of modern thinking. That's what we have to do with Mania 1. And I'm ready for it. So,
yeah, well, I think the place to start, and you've already referenced, there are people out there. There are some people who don't like the main event. They don't think Mr. T should have been involved. Look, with any WrestleMania, you have to start with the draw card match, the main event. And I'm on record. Look, I will go on record. While Mr. T is not that good in the ring, the fact of the matter is, part of WrestleMania was about bringing in the casual audience, which the casual audience, which is still a key focus of WrestleMania today, bringing in people who maybe haven't watched in a while or maybe just don't really know much about wrestling. WrestleMania is the draw card. Let's bring them in, let them see the product, and hopefully they'll like what they see and they'll hang around. And that's why Mr. T was brought in the first place. He was the mainstream attraction to draw in non-wrestling fans, to get them looking at the product. Right. I have no problem with the main event being the same. The build, the way they advertised it, the way they did the build up, the water settle the score, and the post match stuff, and the whole build towards WrestleMania 1, I think is fantastic. And honestly, I personally wouldn't change that match. What are your thoughts?
I don't do this very often, Dave, because I love you so much. I would change this main event.
Hey?
I would change it.
Tell me what you're thinking.
I really think we need to change. We need to go back a month. We need to change the main event of the war to settle the score. And I think here you put Hogan versus Piper for the title.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying you would have Mr. T involved at
war to settle the score.
And you're doing the title match here with what? With Mr. T in Hogan's corner?
Yeah. Yeah, you could still have celebrities. I don't have a problem with celebrities, but I think we don't need celebrities in the match. We don't need celebrities in the match. What I think we do is, now, in this universe, Hogan won the title January of 84. Piper, does the, he still does, and December of 84, Piper still hits Captain Lou with the record, and then shoves Cindy and all that. And then in January of 85, Piper beats Hogan using chicanery via Paul Orndorff and wins the world title. The following month, we have a tag, Piper and Orndorff. We do the WrestleMania 1 main event in February at War to settle the score. Piper
live on MTV.
Well, live on MTV. Piper avoids the getting in the match, makes Orndorff do all the work. And Mr. T is his partner, and Mr. T tries to work the match. In any event, you could have the match end in a smodge. You could have Hogan pin Orndorff. And then the next, and I know and we don't do because there's 2 shows in March. Because 2 weeks before Mania, March 17th, there's actually an MSG house show. I would, of course, dump that. That would not happen in our world because that's stupid. So, but that night at War to Settle the Score, or on the what do you call it, on TV, on syndicated, Piper, Hogan, world title in a cage.
Ooh.
Got to have a cage. I think we need to go all out. You want to beat Crockett to the punch if you're Vince, because obviously that November, my favorite, which I've said often on this show, my favorite Starrcade of all time, Starrcade 85, The Gathering, had 2 cage matches. And of course, in my opinion, one of the greatest of all time, and that is, of course, Magnum TA and Tully in the I Quit. So I think you've got to make that a cage. And I think that would be amazing. That's my theory. That's what I would do. I think you've got to have Hogan Piper. If that is going to be your first mega show ever, you've got to have your world, the biggest heel in the company, who is your world champion, who's been ducking Piper, who's been ducking Hogan on pits. He gets all the heels, the Dr. D's. He gets all the heels to on Piper's pits to surround him, so Hogan can't get at him. I'm telling you, man, you've got to build this shit up over these next 6 weeks between War to Settle the Score, which is February 18th, and WrestleMania 1, which would be March 31st. You've got to build that up, and you have all the heels, the Dr. D's and the Slaughters, because I think Slaughter, or was he gone in 85?
He was gone. He was gone.
He was in AWA. You're right. Trying to think of other heels. Sheik, Volkov.
Sheik, Volkov. Yeah. Valentine,
Morocco, Hammer. Get those guys to always. Piper always has them on pits, in the wings, just in case Hogan tries anything, and he'll have his protection. And you build it, and you build it, and you build it. And then those two have a war on March 31st inside a steel cage, and Hogan wins the world title back.
I must admit your arguments are very persuasive. I was thinking the need to still incorporate the attraction to bring in the non-wrestling audience, but I think you've nailed it by, if you do the Mr. T thing on MTV, you've got the audience there. They're going to want to hopefully come and see the rematch, and that's right. what this becomes. And I think you've nailed that there. I think Hogan with Mr. T in his corner. I think you still need to have him present. You still need to have him at ringside, but he can be there for the support and maybe to help hold off. You've got Piper there. With Ace, with Cowboy Bob, obviously his bodyguard in his corner. Now, I'm going to ask the question: are we talking old school cage or Big Blue?
Oh, old school.
Old school cage, and that can become a part of the storyline, because you could have the ref go down at some point,
right?
And at which point you bring Mr. T into the equation. Mr. T keeps Cowboy Bob and anyone else who wants to maybe come down and try and get in the ring. Right. He keeps them at bay, and that utilizes Mr. T as well. So
correct.
I think that's a really good main event. I like that. I think I'm on board for that.
All right. Now, I think we switch things up. You need to have, I don't know why they did it at WrestleMania 1. It made no sense to me whatsoever. Tito Santana was feuding with the Hammer for the Intercontinental title.
Yes.
Valentine beat him the year before, the previous August. Or was it September? I think it was September. In London, Ontario. And they wrestle again in an epic match in Baltimore in July in a cage. I think you have to have Tito and the Hammer here instead of, no disrespect to JYD, because I have a better match for JYD. So you have, I would put, now, whether he wins or loses, I'm fine. It doesn't matter to me.
I think if you've got Hogan regaining the title from Piper and a tag team match still on the cards, I would probably keep the belt on Hammer here, because I think Hogan winning the title will overshadow Tito winning the IC back.
Right.
So I think Valentine maybe wins by cheating again, or gets counted out, or does something that is going to further the storyline and keep the belt on him to allow you to. But I agree, Greg and Hammer and Tito need to have their match, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so we've changed the world title, we've changed the main event, we've changed the world title, the IC title. I'm going to put it out there. I think the other two title matches need to stay the same. I think absolutely you must keep Wendy Richter and Leilani Kai because of the Cyndi Lauper factor. I think that match can't change. And I think you need to keep the US Express versus Sheik and Bockoff and tag titles.
I agree. No, I agree with that. That I don't have a problem with. So let me jot down. A situation here because I want to make sure we have this down. So, because I have a tag match that I think would be very cool. Okay, hold on. Should have opened this before while we were yapping, but that's usually me. Okay, so we've got. All right, so our main event is all right, Mania 1. So we have Hogan and Piper in the rematch. In the cage. Versus Hulk Hogan. Steel cage. For WWF Championship. Okay. We have Greg Valentine versus Tito Santana. Intercontinental Championship. The other the next two matches I'm good with keeping because they were fine. US Express versus the Foreign Legion, as JR and I call them, the Foreign Legion Tag Team Championship. Okay. I would keep Leilani Kai and Wendy Richter. I think that I'm okay with because that was hot and that was totally a MTV match.
And that's your other casual fan draw because that's where Cyndi Lauper is involved.
Exactly, and David Wolf.
Want to keep her in that role.
Right.
And
yeah.
You just want to hear Cyndi Lauper say that Wendy Richter is going to beat Lanny Kai.
Lanny Kai. So those four matches are set. How about this for a tag? Mr. T and the Junkyard Dog versus Paul Orndorff and Dr. D, David Schultz.
Well, I like that, and that gets T. So
in a match.
T on card. You've got T in a match. There's the draw. I like that. I think Mr. T. Gee, I like that. That's yeah. I had a different spot for JYD, but I actually think that would be a better spot, and that keeps and that brings Schultz onto the card, who was still with the company, or just around this time he got fired because he He got fired because of the the Belzer, what was
when he hit John Stossel. He hit John Stossel. Yeah,
Stossel.
John Stossel.
But that was all linked in with that. That was all the same night where he was threatening to take out Mr. T because he'd been left out of the match. Vince had left him out, and that's what caused all the issues. So if you've got him in the match with Mr. T, he might be more willing to play ball. Although then the question has to be, would David Schultz be willing to play ball even further and take a loss to Mr. T?
Right. Oh boy. Well, you could have Orndorff eat the pin and promise him, give him promise him, a Hogan feud in the future or something. I don't know.
You end up being able to run the same story. Orndorff takes the pin after some shenanigans go wrong.
Right.
And then the next week on TV, Piper and Orton and Schultz can be making fun of him and they don't want to have anything to do with him. He fires Bobby Heenan and goes babyface just like he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I could see that.
Works.
Sure.
All right. So we're talking tag matches.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another tag match that needs to be considered. But I've only got one. I'm missing a competitor now that you've put this idea of JYD in with Mr. T, because one of the draw matches of the original WrestleMania is Andre the Giant versus Big John Studd, body slam match.
Correct.
Great match, great draw, and it's a match you could keep as it is. But I want to put in a butt into this conversation, because part of the backstory with Andre and Big John Studd is the fact that John Studd and Ken Patera had beaten down Andre on television and cut his hair. And in fact, Andre was battling Patera around the house show circuit as well. And so I think looking at some form of a revenge match where both Patera and Studd, because Patera left off the WrestleMania card, Patera and Studd are in a match against Andre where Andre can get his revenge on both of them. You can still have the money up for grabs. You can still have Heenan put money up for line, Andre win, Andre give the money away at the end. You can still do a lot of that. But I think if you want to get Patera on the card, you really need him and Studd together against Andre. And therein lies the problem. I was considering you might put Andre with JYD. I'm missing a partner for him now. But I think Andre with Patera and Studd would be a perfect rematch opportunity.
You need it. So Andre needs a tag partner is what you're saying.
That's right.
Steamboat?
Is Steamboat too new? What about Snooker?
Ooh. Good call. Yes, that could be good. Because Snooker could do a lot of the heavy lifting. Yeah, I like that. Good one.
He can bounce around for Patera and Studd, and then Andre absolutely slaughter them.
I am typing that sucker down. Good one.
And Patera and Studd, I mean, pre-match part of that could be we cut Andre's hair and Snooker, we're going to cut yours too. Or maybe at one moment in the match, they've got Snooker down. They don't go for the pin because Bobby is handing them the scissors. They're going to get the scissors out. They're going to cut Snooker's hair just the way heels do. He makes the hot tag and Andre cleans house.
Yep.
Bloodies up Patera, chases, slams Big John Studd, wins the match, and he and Snooker can give the money away. Especially because if you're taking Hogan back to a singles match and having T in his corner, Snooker loses his role. He was the second for that match because of
Right.
Where it stood. So you've got to find a role for him.
You, sir, are a genius. I like that. You're right. Steamboat has only been here, a couple months, because, he was at Starrcade 84. So, good call. Snuka's been with WWF for the last, 3-4 years at this point. Turned babyface. Epic feud with Morocco in 83.
Oh, you're talking about Snuka, sorry. Snuka.
Yeah, Snuka. Snuka had the epic feud in 83. He had turned babyface. Yeah. Yep.
That would open the door then for you to have Steamboat and Morocco battle it off and start their feud, which started about a month later anyway.
Right. Yes. Now, I think in our world, the NWA still works with it, so I think Flair should defend the title. No, I'm only kidding. Could you imagine? We totally jacked the shit out of this show. Could you imagine? We could throw Dusty and Flair on here. Why not? Imagine. Oh God, that'd be great. That'd be crazy.
Invasion. They're invading.
Yeah, they'd open the show, of course. They're curtain jerking.
Of course.
All right, so we're at 7 matches. Let's look at the rest of the card and see anybody we haven't mentioned yet.
There's a couple of people that I believe haven't been mentioned that would need to be on the show.
Oh!
Number one.
Oh, I got one. Can
Yep.
I just say this match before I lose it out of my head?
Absolutely.
So, David Sammartino and Brutus Beefcake wrestle their singles match at War to Settle the Score. And at WrestleMania, it is Brutus and his tag team partner, Luscious Johnny V, versus the Sammartino family. Father and son. So not only do you get Andre and you got the cage match, you get the Brune on the show. Now you're getting all the Italians excited.
Yeah, I love Bruno being on the show.
Yeah.
But I reckon I can spice this match up even further.
Oh,
Okay?
please.
I'm all for it. David and Bruno Sammartino. You want Bruno on the show. You need to hide David's weaknesses, that's for sure.
Yep.
Brutus is on one side, but what if you did this instead of Johnny V being his tag team partner?
Mm-hmm.
There is a gentleman who was still competing on house shows. He was starting to transition out of a active wrestler role, but he hadn't completely gone yet. And if you're talking a tag team match with Bruno on one side, what if Jesse the Body in what might be his final match is Brutus's tag team partner?
Okay. That's interesting. Now, who sits next to Gorilla?
Good question. Maybe Mean Gene. Maybe Vince.
Oh, I can't do Mean Gene. I'll blow my brain out. I hate when Mean Gene does. I am not a fan of his on match commentary. He is terrible. How about?
Maybe it's a one-off. Maybe Jesse comes out, does most of the show. Maybe you put this match on early in the show, and Jesse comes back onto commentary for a fair chunk of it afterwards.
Could do that. Or Bruno or Jesse starts the show. If Bruno and David win, Jesse wants no part of anything and just leaves, and Bruno sits in his seat and finishes the show. Because Bruno already hates. Well, he really doesn't hate Piper until he doesn't really start hating Piper until
the Savage
86. So
86, yeah.
I do like I do like Jesse in that role, though, if the doctors allow it. I agree. Or, I mean, we could do a 6-man because Adrian Adonis is still floating around.
Ooh.
Dick Murdoch is gone. I think Dick's gone by 85. I don't think he's in WWF anymore after they lose to the US Express. Do you make it a 6-man tag? Nah, you don't want to jack that match up too much. Who else would you put? Let me see. We've covered most. I mean, you could do Matt Bourne, I guess, but oh. I feel like we need to put Adonis on this show.
Well, I'll tell you who is missing off the show at the moment is Bundy.
Yeah, I just saw his name. I just saw Bundy too.
Bundy needs to be on there, and Bundy needs to squash someone.
Yeah.
Now, I'm happy
the SD Jones match, or
if we keep him squashing SD Jones, I have no problem with that, which might open up an option for an Adrian Adonis match. I've got a potential opponent then for Adonis.
Okay.
If you want, Bundy can still squash SD Jones in. Now, was it a record 9 seconds that took about 23 or 24 seconds to occur?
24 seconds. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Exactly. That's 24 very long seconds.
I think we allow Bundy to squash SD Jones. I don't think there's a problem. So Adrian Adonis is on the card. There is a competitor who's around who appears in lots of events. Well, actually, I can give you 2 options for an opponent for Adrian Adonis. And one of them is a former world champion who still appears at a lot of shows and would give a lot of credibility to a win, and that's Pedro Morales. The other option is someone who I'm coming to detest more and more every time I see him on 1984 and 1985 shows, and that's Ivan Putski.
Polish power. Yes. Putski and Adonis?
That's what I'm saying. You could have Adonis beat Putski, or you could have Adonis beat Morales.
Forgot about Pedro. Yeah, you really want to jack this show up, huh? I'd like to see Adonis. I'd like to see Pedro put Adonis over. Or, wait a minute. You know, we could make it a 6-man tag. Not to ruin this for you, Dave, but could do Beefcake, Jesse, and Adonis against David and 2 former World Wrestling Federation champions. David, Bruno, Pedro.
Yeah, well, that'll work. It means we're not subjecting everyone to a singles Pedro match. Look, he's got. I respect him, but in '85 he was born.
Oh no! By that point, he had become pretty much a color by numbers, mid-card guy who was just cashing a check. That's pretty much all he was.
If we take Paul Heyman's accentuate the strengths and hide the negatives, you put Bruno and Pedro in a tag match along with David, and you can allow each of them to just have little brief spells in the ring. And Brutus and Adonis and Jesse can carry the bulk of the working, but you've got 2 former world champions in there. I think that would be a fantastic draw.
Yeah, I really think you got to take advantage. Mid-'80s, you still got the old school fans. You have the Puerto Rican fans that loved Pedro. You have the Italians that love Bruno. You're bringing all that crowd in there. You've got to load this show up. Vince, in our world, Vince is not short-sighted or a lech, but I really do think that you need to have. I like making that a 6-man because, again, like you said, Bruno and Pedro. This isn't 1963, or hell, it's not even 1973. You can't have Pedro and Bruno out there doing too much. You can't.
And you could actually have that as your kickoff match. You could have that kick the show off, and that way Jesse can move. I would say Bruno, Pedro are going to win the match with David. I'd say you'd have them win. Then you can have Jesse come out on commentary for the second or third match for the rest of the show, and Gorilla can needle him all night about the fact that he lost in the first match.
Right. Yeah.
So, bit of fun there. Just something to consider. So,
yep.
I like that 6-man. I think that's good. So, I think we're pretty well there. There's one more match. I think there's one more team that I think need to be on this show that aren't on it. That had debuted, were making their mark in the company, and are the future, and that's the British Bulldogs. They've been with the company for a couple of months now, and I think if getting the stars on the show, I think you want to showcase the Bulldogs as well. Especially, although we've got a couple of tag matches, a lot of them are makeshift teams. It's all about revenge. You don't really have any of your future for the tag team division on there.
Right.
So I'm throwing out the suggestion that maybe the British Bulldogs need to be on the show as well. And when you look at the card, I can see two potential opponents for them. One option is you could have the Battle of the Dogs, and you could have the Moondogs against the Bulldogs.
Yep, I was just thinking that. Yep.
The other option is the TV taping immediately after WrestleMania sees the debut of a new tag team, who you could consider debuting at WrestleMania instead. Tag team that comprises Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Oh.
Both of whom are bouncing around at the moment and don't really... They've been doing singles matches. They've been with the company for a couple of months. Now, that's the dreamer in me would love Bulldogs Heart Foundation on Mania 1. The realist in me thinks maybe you put the Bulldogs over the Moondogs and let the Heart Foundation debut later.
You could have the Bulldogs and the Moondogs, have the Bulldogs win, and then have the Heart Foundation debut by running in and attacking the Bulldogs.
Ooh. Oh, I like that.
And then we brawl, and we're like, oh, my God, who are these guys? And then Jimmy Hart could say something. They could do an interview. That could be like the second match on the card. And then maybe 4 matches later, Lord Alfred could be in the back, and we get an interview. Jimmy Hart introduces his new team, the Heart Foundation.
Oh, I like that. Because we recognise them. They've both been on TV. Bret and Jim have both been on TV, but not as a team. They've both been singles guys. So Gorilla could be saying, why are they out here together? What are they doing? What's going on here? And like you said, then Jimmy can announce it later on that they're the new team. I think, I like that. That sounds good. So I think we've got the makings of a pretty solid pay-per-view standard WrestleMania 1.
Yes, I agree. Here's your card. This is our official card. So we have the British Bulldogs versus the Moondogs. And then after the match, the Heart Foundation attack Davey Boy and Dynamite. We still have our King Kong Bundy, SD Jones, kayfabe 9-second brawl, or one-sided brawl. A Legends 6-man tag as Brutus Beefcake and the East-West connection of Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis take on the San Martino family, Bruno and David, and their friend, Pedro Morales. So not only do you have 2 former World Wrestling Federation champions. Magnificent Rocco takes on Ricky Steamboat. And we get the beginning of their, kung fu karate feud. I love this match. This is such a 1985 WWF match. It just makes me smile. Big John Studd, Ken Patera versus Andre the Giant and the Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Come on, Dave. That just has Federation era rock and wrestling written all over it. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
God, I love that match.
With $10,000 on the line or $50,000, whatever Bobby Heenan wants to put up for grabs.
Yep. And Andre gets his head shaved again, and Snuka's head gets shaved, if he loses. We have Mr. T and the Junkyard Dog taking on Paul Orndorff and Dr. D, David Schultz. Then our 4 title matches. Leilani Kai to defend the women's title against Wendy Richter. The U.S. Express to defend the tag team title against the Foreign Legion. And Greg Valentine will defend the Intercontinental title against Tito Santana. And in the main event, inside of a steel cage, Roddy Piper, the Hot Rod, will defend the World Wrestling Federation Championship against Hulk Hogan. I, Dave Hall, think we just made a ton of money.
Absolutely. We're raking
opinion.
it in on that one. I think there's a lot of people who are going to pay to watch that
Yes.
event.
Let us know what you think in on our socials, on the Place to Be Nation page when we post the show here. Let us know. What do you think? Would you watch that show? Would you go back to an alternate March 31st, 1985 and watch that? I think I would. I totally would. And I still love the first WrestleMania, so I can't even complain. All right. Let us move it along. Dave, what is journey number 2?
We're going to jump ahead a few years. We're going to talk about a mania that a lot of people I think could be rebooked anyway. An event that is not considered one of the better WrestleManias, and a lot of people think that there's many matches that could have been done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we're going to have a look at WrestleMania 9.
Yep.
But we're going to do it with a little bit of a twist. Now, as we all know, the WWF are well renowned for planning a long way ahead, where they're going, what they're wanting. And we know that come Survivor Series, the plans are normally in place for the following year's WrestleMania. They know what direction they're heading, what they want their main events to be, what they want their feature matches to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking. I was reading something again recently that there are a couple of changes that occurred around Survivor Series in 1992 that resulted in a lot of changes happening to the company leading up to WrestleMania 9. Now, one of those changes was an injury to Ric Flair. He was suffering an inner ear problem that affected his balance. It was affecting his equilibrium, and that resulted in Vince deciding to take the title off Ric Flair and put it on Bret Hart. And we're not going to change that. We're not changing that scenario. But not long after that, the Ultimate Warrior was quit, sacked, left the company right on the verge of Survivor Series. And if you read Ric Flair's book, you read Bret Hart's book, you read a lot of stuff from the time, Vince had been telling Ric Flair that his next program was going to be with the Ultimate Warrior. And that obviously got nixed. And with Warrior leaving, you had Mr. Perfect very hastily turned babyface, and we start our march to WrestleMania 9. And because of these changes, Ric Flair was really left with, he could see that where the drop was coming and the demotion, and he asked for his release. That's a well-known thing. And it got me thinking, well, what if Ultimate Warrior didn't leave the company? What if he hung around till WrestleMania 9? Because that was in the works. That's where they were planning. And what if Ric Flair didn't decide to leave in early 93 and he hung around at least until WrestleMania 9? What might WrestleMania 9 have looked like? In other words, what might the original plans for WrestleMania 9 have been before all these changes happened in their planning process? So that's what we're going to do right now. Ultimate Warrior and Ric Flair are staying with the company until at least WrestleMania 9. How does WrestleMania 9 look different? And this allows us to fix up some other matches as well. So that's our backdrop, and that's our scenario for this rebook. And to start the process, I've got to ask you, Scott. We want to start with a world title. We've got to go back to the Royal Rumble, because the Royal Rumble is the first time that the winner, Royal Rumble 93, the winner gets the title shot. So the question has to be, does Yokozuna win the Rumble and maintain that world title spot, or do you see someone else in the world title match?
The first question I have to ask is, and I'll give you the authority on this one. Does Flair, do we know Flair's staying while he's still World Wrestling Federation champion? Because this is a big deal for me, for what I'm thinking.
I think that's a good question. I guess the question comes back to I think there were a lot of reactions happening all on top of each other, and Vince has reacted to, which we've seen him do multiple times, react to something that is probably quite small and insignificant, and changed his direction. He did it with Demolition Axe. Just a little bit of a reaction to Seafish, and Vince thought he had a heart problem, and they pulled the tag titles off him.
Right.
Ric Flair has a little bit of an equilibrium thing, something that could have been managed and worked through, and Vince reacts and pulls the title off him. And maybe linked in with that was some concerns about what was happening with Warrior anyway. So if everyone's staying, do we keep the title on? Does Flair work through this? Is it maybe not as bad an issue for him, and does he keep the title? I think it's a reasonable thing. If we're changing our scenario, we're changing a world where we want Flair and Warrior through to the end. I think Vince would have wanted Flair and Warrior, if he was going to go around the circuit with them after SummerSlam, to have the title in the picture. So let's say that Flair is keeping the belt for now, out of it coming into Survivor Series.
Okay. Then here's my deal. I ready?
Yep.
I let the tag match happen. Flair and Perfect versus Savage and Warrior. Fine with that.
Flair and Razor.
I mean, Razor. Flair and Razor against and Perfect's in their corner, because now we're keeping him a heel. That's not as big a deal for my plan, so we'll leave him there for the moment. That match happens, no biggie, whoop-de-doo. Brett is your Intercontinental Champion. He still wrestles Skinner. Brett. Oh wait, no, never mind. No, Brett doesn't have the belt. What am I talking about? Sean's got the belt. Oh, there's no... Okay, well, here's the thing. Sean and Brett have a match for the Intercontinental title. Okay? And the match could end in a schmaz. It doesn't matter to me. My point is, I'm looking past the Survivor Series. So whatever happens on the Survivor Series happens.
Yeah.
Flair keeps the belt as we go into 93. Bret Hart wins the 93 Royal Rumble in Sacramento. And it is Flair and Bret in the main event of WrestleMania 9. And all throughout the Raws, after a show debuts, Bret just keeps telling Flair, "You're not in my league, kid. You're not in my league. You can win your little matches in Canada, but we're in Vegas, man. This is my city, Sin City. You just can't keep with me. You can't hang with me." You may have won your little Royal Rumble. You'll get your little title shot. You'll get your check. But this, the Winged Eagle, you're not ready. Build that shit up for 3 months and tell me you're not going to get a 27, 28-minute war. Because I'll tell you something, the steroid thing still is going on, and Vince needs to still promote the small guys. So I would have no problem still having small guys, getting their shot. Because obviously, Hogan knew what he had to do because he lost a lot of his mass.
Yep.
So I think you do Brett and Flair for the world title at WrestleMania 9 in the main event.
I think that's great. It's a better story and a better ascension, as opposed to Brett just suddenly winning it on a house show with no real build. You can
Correct.
really build the story of Bret Hart here, and you can build the legacy. You can build the family heritage, and Flair can do a lot of what Jerry Lawler does later on and bag out the family, and he can beat down Owen on a instead of what Ray's, he can beat down Owen in the lead up to the event, and he can do all sorts of Ric Flair things. But I think you would be looking at Ric Flair, knowing that it was likely a passing of the torch moment in this company, knowing that Vince probably wanted to go with Brett and do something different, and probably recognizing that he might be getting ready to leave and go elsewhere. Maybe he hasn't made it publicly known yet, but probably starting to think about a return to WCW.
Mm-hmm.
I think Flair would go out of his way to try and put on as good a match as he could, and make Brett look $1 million.
I agree.
And he doesn't need help. I mean, Brett looks $1 million anyway. But I think they would tear the place apart.
They totally would. I don't think we'd have a problem with that. And I think Vince has to promote the small guys in the main event. He has to. He has to build this up. Because obviously, after what's been going on that stuff can't go away. We can't pull that. So, I think that is a main event that is needed for that moment. I think it'll elevate Brett. Yoko, we'll get to Yoko. Yoko's not getting screwed. Eventually, we will make Yoko a world champion, but we're not going to rush it.
Absolutely. So that's our main event, Flair and Bret Hart. I think it's a fantastic main event. So let's move on to some other key matchups. I think a match that it was criminal that this match was not on the card, and I think coming out of Survivor Series, Flair and Razor versus Savage and Warrior. Razor and Savage had started their feud, and we never got a payoff. Never once did we get the payoff to it. I think you blow it off at WrestleMania. Razor Ramon versus Randy Savage.
Yeah, and I think that match will be amazing. Yes, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I'm putting that down. I think that match will be fun. There'll be a great build. I will never forget, Dave, one of my favorite PWI articles that Dr. G had when I first got to know him in college. There was an article in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and it was Quienes Mas Macho. And it was an article about Razor Ramon and Savage. You keep Savage happy because he's still wrestling. Because remember, that was one of Vince's, that was one of his stickling points, is he thought he still had some time in the tank. Well, in our universe, Vince still totally trusts him. And I think they put on a banger. I think they put on a total banger.
I agree, but in recognition that Vince might be looking to ease him back a little bit, it might be that Razor goes over. Razor wins the match. He might win by cheating, and maybe Savage can still be standing tall afterwards. But perhaps Razor actually gets the win, and that allows you to build Razor as the potential challenger to Bret Hart coming out of WrestleMania.
Right. Yeah. I just think I think the crowd likes both guys. I think, obviously he becomes a baby face down the line. I approve. I approve of that. That's a great match, Dave. That's a great match.
So the question has to be asked then.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Before we start building like some of the keeping matches and stuff like that, I've got to ask the question: if Warrior is around and Warrior is not wrestling Flair for the title, what do we do with Warrior?
You don't think I had a plan, sir? I am marking out like a schoolgirl, because you know what I do?
What have you got?
I slip Warrior in Beefcake spot, and you have Hogan and Warrior versus Money Inc., and Hogan and Warrior win the tag team titles. I would be marking out like a 3-year-old if I saw Hogan and Warrior as tag team champions. Come on, Dave. Come on. That would be awesome.
I love the match. I love the match. Warrior and Hogan finally teaming up against Money. I think that would be brilliant. And the storyline would probably could be similar. But Money Inc. start maybe.
Oh no, Beefcake could be on the sideline. Beefcake could be, supporting them, and they could still try to beat his face off or whatever. That's fine.
Yeah,
but
he could be in their corner. Warrior and Hogan with Beefcake in their corner versus Money.
So good.
But see, you can build the story around it. You could have perhaps Flair has wrestled the Ultimate Warrior at the Royal Rumble for the title, and Flair has retained the title through massive cheating. Maybe Money Inc. got involved, or probably more likely, Perfect got involved. Warrior doesn't win the title, and then in the next couple of weeks, you could still do the Beefcake Money Inc. thing, but you don't have Jimmy save the day. While they're attacking him and beating the crap out of him, Warrior runs out to protect Beefcake. Money Inc. bail. And then they start mocking Warrior. You're just a loser. You lost to Flair. You didn't even win. We're champions. We didn't need to stay in the ring because we're champions and we don't dirty ourselves with losers. And then Warrior can start saying how he's willing to fight them. He'll challenge them to a match, and he'll get himself a tag team partner if they just accept the challenge. Money Inc. accept the challenge without even hearing who the partner is, and then Warrior brings Hogan out as his partner, and then they announce that Beefcake they're going to do it for Beefcake. They're going to win the title for Brutus, and Brutus can be in the corner, and that's how you bring it out. I think that storyline would be sensational. I'm going to throw the argument from a long-term perspective of the company. Do Warrior and Hogan really need to win the titles?
Long-term? No.
Can they win the match by countout or DQ? Like maybe better scenario than the Hogan. Well, actually, Hogan and Beefcake lost by DQ, didn't they? Actually,
they did.
could Warrior and Hogan win the match by disqualification or count out? They get to stand tall. They can do it in a Hogan Warrior way, but still keep the belts on Money Inc.
Probably.
Because we know Hogan's not going to hang around.
No. Yeah, I mean, maybe I got to be honest. I really wanted them to win the belts because I think that would be so cool.
Maybe. Oh, they could win the belts tonight. Maybe we have shenanigans. Maybe you have some sort of outcome where the next night on Raw, WWF President Jack Tunney, I think he was still president at the time, it's announced that, because of the shenanigans, because of whatever's happened, it was actually, basically we do a dusty finish the next night. Because of what happened, we're actually giving the belts back to Money Inc. Maybe Ted DiBiase had hired a bunch of lawyers and they've been able to show that the match should have been a disqualification at some point or whatever. The ref made an error and the title belts go back to them. And so you don't even have to take the belts. You don't even have to have Warrior and Hogan lose the belts. They just are returned to Money Inc. So you still get the moment at WrestleMania of the win, and then on Raw, we just take the belts back off them.
I'm okay with that. That's fine. I need, this is just me personally marking out, I need them to be champions, if only for a day. That's just me. That's just me being a mark.
and I think it's a great idea. And I would love it. Can you imagine Warrior and Hogan standing there as tag champs? I think it would be fantastic.
I think it would be ridiculously awesome. It is. But you're right. If we're talking, if we're booking stuff for, for the year, no, absolutely not. That would be silly. To have, it'd be silly to have, then as tag team champions for longer than a week or something, for like a few months. That would be silly. No, I agree. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's crazy. But from the perspective of, of just having that moment, because it's obvious that that things are changing in the WWF. We know that. That's but I think for just a moment, I think we would need to see a taste of the old WWF, if only for a short while. So even for that one moment, I think it would be pretty awesome to have, to have them as tag team champions. But I agree with you. For a long-term perspective, it would make no sense. Money Inc. would need to put over a younger, better team. No, that makes perfect sense. I agree with you, Dave, if we're talking long-term. I'm booking like Vince. I want my 20 minutes on WrestleMania night, then we can deal with everything else later. I'm such a Vince mark.
I think with Money Inc., you've got the ability to do that. You could have shenanigans before the finish that Money Inc. are then able to come out the next night. We've hired lawyers. This isn't going to stand. We were cheated. They should have been disqualified, whatever it is. And then maybe a week later, yes, the lawyers have agreed and, Money, the titles have been returned. And, because Hogan doesn't ever have to appear on TV again. And, to allow that to occur. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it'd be good fun.
So, all right. So okay.
We've got our tag title match. We've got our world title match. So let me throw this out there for the Intercontinental title match. I'd like to suggest that perhaps Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty don't meet at Royal Rumble. We hold that off just a little bit longer. And at WrestleMania 9, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty face off for the Intercontinental title in a ladder match.
Oh, so So you wanted to build immediately. You want the ladder match legacy a year early. I see. I approve. I actually already typed it. I approve.
I think Marty and Sean would have an absolute barn burner of a ladder match.
Yes, they totally would. No, you're totally right. They totally would. And Sean keeps it. I don't think Marty has to win.
Great.
Yeah, because we're already gonna have 2 title changes. We don't, you know how that works. You don't change everything. Because I ultimately would like to see Tatanka win the Intercontinental title. I think to this day I still think he got boned at WrestleMania, at the WrestleMania in real life. So I think ultimately Tatanka should become the tag team champions. Tatanka should become the Intercontinental champion. And I'm sure we'll put him in a match with somebody else on this card to build him for perhaps Sean and Tatanka at SummerSlam. So, yeah, I agree with that. I already got it down. So Sean and Marty, the Rockers explode at WrestleMania in a ladder match in Vegas for the IC belt. Sean will retain. All right, since I mentioned him, what do you do with Tatanka?
That's a really good question, and it's interesting looking at the roster. I think where you're at is you probably need to give Tatanka an easy win, a win that is perhaps even predictable, but against someone who can take a loss, but is high enough on the card to, or to be accepted. I mean, I don't know. Do you consider doing? You consider doing like the Rick Martel match earlier? Do you put Tatanka over Martel at WrestleMania? Just trying to remember who else is on the roster that can be beaten around this time.
Do we use Perfect?
We haven't used Perfect, but this is what I would do with Perfect. We know he was building to a comeback, but it hasn't happened yet, and it was rushed to get him in. I would keep him with Flair right through to here, and what you could do is part of how Bret Hart wins the title could be Perfect interference backfires. He comes in to attack. Flair's holding him. Hart ducks. Perfect lays out Flair with a punch.
Mm-hmm.
Bret then tosses Perfect out of the ring, clamps on the sharpshooter, wins the match by submission. Post WrestleMania, you then allow a better build for a breakup of Perfect and Flair. You can break them up over a few episodes and build up to, whether it be at King of the Ring or SummerSlam, you could do your loser leaves the company match later in the year after you've allowed them to actually the relationship to break down. And maybe in the couple of weeks leading into it, maybe Perfect has made a couple of tag team appearances with Flair. Maybe he and Flair have had a couple of matches so that Perfect is generating the, I'm back, I'm ring fit, but he's still the liaison. So maybe Perfect wrestles on the card, but as a heel, which I guess opens up the door. He could face Tatanka, but I don't want Tatanka to lose, and I don't think those two can go against each other as a result. Do you put Tatanka against? I mean, do you put him against a Skinner, or do you put him against? Again, do you run it early? Do you put him against Bam Bam Bigelow?
Ooh, Bigelow. Somebody we haven't talked about. Bigelow. Bigelow Tatanka?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
But you have Bigelow put him over?
Yes, yeah. Tatanka would have to win. Keep the streak alive, heading towards his IC title match.
Yeah, I think I could do that. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that. I think that's good for Tatanka. And Bigelow, I mean, at that point, you could build him up. If you have any, specific plans for him down the line, you could rebuild him up. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So, all right. So Tatanka versus Bam Bigelow.
And I've just had an idea. Sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I've just had an idea for how to use Perfect. As I said, Perfect will second Ric Flair in the title match. What if earlier in the night, Perfect wrestles Owen?
Oh.
As part of the storyline. We're roughing up, and maybe Perfect, he beats Owen down. He's got Owen beaten. They had to carry Owen out on a stretcher because they're playing into trying to get into Bret Hart's mind and Bret Hart's head.
I love that. It could still be an amazing match.
Oh yeah.
We don't have to cheapen the match with like a lot of brawling and stuff. I like that. Good call, Dave. Wow.
Perfect gets the win with the Perfect Plex. And Owen, he raises his hand, and with Owen's back turned, Perfect just levels him. They do a post-match beatdown. Razor and Flair could come out, well, maybe not Flair, but Razor could come out and help. And they do a post-match beatdown on Owen. And then when Perfect goes back and he's standing with Flair, they're laughing about it, saying, look what we just did to your brother, Bret, and just imagine what the champ is going to do to you.
I concur with you. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah. And the match itself will be amazing. We could open with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Be a damn good opener.
Well, maybe second. Maybe not
okay.
Opener. Maybe second.
Because do you open with the ladder match?
No.
Oh, that's true. Do you open with the ladder match?
No. No, I have that later in the card.
Okay.
I don't see why you can't open with what they open with. Steiners and the Head Shrinkers.
I was just asking you if we would keep that match.
Absolutely. You've got to have the Steiners on there because they're your next. They're the team that are going to be going against Money Inc. next, and the Head Shrinkers are the best opponent, the only other heel team in the company, and we know they can have a good match. They had the best match on the card as it was.
All right, so we're going to put that down there then. Yeah, all right. So Head Shrinkers and Steiners as the Steiners build their cachet to future tag team title opportunities, because that's probably who you want Money Inc. to ultimately job to.
Yeah. And if we're talking about matches that stay the same, the other match I'd keep on the card without change would be Crush and Doink.
Yeah. Do you have Crush win? Or
Yep.
do you still do the weirdo stuff?
I think you could still do what you did. I have no issue with Doink winning. I mean,
Okay.
you're already putting over Bret Hart. You're putting over Warrior and Hogan. You're putting over Tatanka. You're putting over the Steiners. Doink can beat Crush. You can have the illusion occur and everything. I think you could keep that match just as it is.
Okay,
Fun
so
match.
Yeah, I thought it was. I mean, it was Matt Bourne, and Crush was pre-roids at that point, I would assume. And then Head Shrinkers versus Steiner Brothers.
I've got 2 other matches for this card that we have.
All right, well, we have 8, so 2 more matches would be perfect.
Okay. So the first match, with Razor facing Randy Savage, I would, and Mr. Perfect involved in another storyline, I would put Lex Luger against Bob Backlund and let Luger win clean.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll put that down. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't have to go crazy with that. You know, Bob's getting paid and narcissist first huge match.
Yeah. Luger needs to win.
Totally.
So that leaves us with the last match that we haven't talked about. And there's a couple of key players that haven't been mentioned. And I think we need to talk about the man with the streak. The Undertaker is not on our card yet. And he needs to be on our card.
Of course he does.
But for heaven's sake, he doesn't need to face a lumbering, unskilled, overmatched waste of talent. He doesn't have any talent in Giant Gonzalez. We don't need that match. It is awful. But can you imagine a match can you imagine this moment in the Royal Rumble where the Undertaker is about to enter the ring, but in the Rumble, a man has been absolutely tearing it up. He's come out early, maybe at number 9 or 10, and he's been tossing people left and right. He's only new to the company, but because of his size, no one can stop him. And Yokozuna looks like he could be the first man ever to be, just as everyone enters the ring, he throws them out because no one can stop him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the gong tolls and the lights drop, and walking to the Rumble ring is the Undertaker. And the Undertaker and Yokozuna start battling it, and Undertaker gets Yokozuna to the ropes and clotheslines him over the top, eliminating Yokozuna from the Rumble, eliminating the pre-match favorite, and opening the door for someone smaller like Bret Hart to win the Royal Rumble. Yokozuna is not happy with having been eliminated, and he immediately pulls the Undertaker out. The 2 men battle to the back, and we set up a match at WrestleMania between the Undertaker and Yokozuna.
Wow. This young, up-and-coming guy, Yokozuna, who we know nothing about, but is scaring the hell out of everybody. And here he is against the dead man. And you have a young Taker. I mean, what's his WrestleMania record is 2-0.
I think Yokozuna would actually bring a lot out in Taker in the ring. Now, we know that they had future matches, and honestly, it's later that year they had matches. But I think you could work this match in a way that would help showcase each of their strengths. Mm-hmm. And if you want to think to the future, you want Yokozuna to still be able to maybe be a contender for the title later in the year. And maybe we want, although it wasn't on their mind at this time, you might want Taker to not lose. perhaps your ending could be along the lines of Yokozuna is struggling. He's hit him with a Samoan drop and Taker doesn't stay down. He hits the leg drop and Taker doesn't stay down. He goes for the bonsai drop and Taker sits up before it lands so that you haven't killed the finishing move. Taker's fighting back. Yokozuna's reeling. And then maybe Fuji gets up on the apron to distract for a moment. He drops the bucket of salt. Yokozuna picks up the salt, puts it in Undertaker's eyes, drawing the DQ, and then he drops him with the bonsai drop. So he's been DQ'd. You could do the bonsai drop. You could do a couple of bonsai drops. Undertaker walks out. Yokozuna walks out, hands raised, and the Undertaker sits up. Yokozuna looks strong. Undertaker hasn't lost. You've got future rematches, and yet at the same time, you could move either into another series of matches. You could put Yokozuna on a path to the world title if you wanted.
Right.
I think you've got options there.
I agree. You have plenty of options there. Yeah, I like that idea. Totally. That gives us 10 matches. I think that's a very neat and tidy WrestleMania show. Let's get a quick run through from bottom to top, or whatever, however we did it. Undertaker versus Yokozuna. Lex Luger versus Bob Backlund. Head Shrinkers versus Steiner Brothers. Doink versus Crush. Perfect versus Owen. Tatanka versus Bigelow. Shawn and Marty, ladder match for the IC belt. Money Inc. and Hogan Warrior for the tag team titles. Savage versus Razor. And Rick versus Brett for the World Wrestling Federation title. That's pretty awesome. I think we put a very nice card together. Very nice card together. Everyone, what do you think of that? I think our WrestleMania 9 is better than the real one. I think our WrestleMania 1 is better than the real one. We are 2 for 2. Dave, I like that. I like the Yoko Taker thing. It's almost like they're both young. Remember, Taker's older, but remember, he's only been in the company. He's only been in WWF for, at that point, barely 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I approve. There's your WrestleMania 9, folks, in an alternate universe. Tell me you would not want to watch that show. And now we go from adjusting to starting from scratch. We're now going to do what I do. I love doing this. Of all the times that we've done this, Dave, I've always had a blast doing it. And that is inventing a show from scratch at a time when this certain show didn't happen. Now, I think I need to look back, and I have a terrible memory. Have we done this with our previous 2 Mania episodes? I don't think we did.
No, we haven't.
We haven't. Okay. I want to make sure. So we're going to go to a year that WrestleMania did not exist and make one. We're not going to go back too far. In fact, we're kind of around. We just did a show around that same timeline. So we are going to do, for part 3 of our show tonight, we are going to create a WrestleMania from 1984. So we're going to go back just a year from where we just did WrestleMania 1.
So almost like it was part of Vince's expansion. Vince has taken over. He's crowned a new. He sort of changed the direction, bringing in all these new guys, and as a result, he's going to have his own supercard, because we all know that in November 1983, the NWA have just had a very successful outing with the original Starrcade show.
Correct.
And Vince has probably seen that, and he's gone, hang on a minute. I can do a big show as well. I'll show you that I can do a big show. And so he books Madison Square Garden and puts a lot of money into WrestleMania 1984.
Yep. Yes. And the only tricky part here, and I'm wholeheartedly looking forward to it, is that the roster, we have to really pay attention to the roster, because 84 was a very weird transitional year that that a lot of guys may not have been around, or were kind of in transition, or were not there when you thought they were there, if you get my drift. So
and it's something that's been good, because I've been doing a watch through of 1984 championship wrestling. So I've really been dug deep into this time period over the last couple of months. So
that's awesome.
Yes. So, and you're right, because it's the time period where January, February, there's a massive influx of a lot of talent that become the mainstays of this rock and roll wrestling era. But there's a few guys that don't show up until June and July. And it's like there's a second influx later in the year. So there's a lot of changes that happen in January, February 84. And if you're looking at building a supercard, a WrestleMania in maybe like April, late March or early April of 1984, you've got a bunch of guys that have just come in. You've got some guys that are still around from before, but there are guys that aren't quite on the scene yet to make their mark. So it makes for an interesting, and the card, the roster's not as big. It's not as bloated yet. It's still quite small. There's only like 25, maybe 30 guys in total on the regular roster.
Correct.
So it's a much smaller roster, and it's something I think if we look at how we introed that before, the NWA have just done Starrcade, and it's been a big show. But the NWA, at the back end of the territory days, Jim Crockett, who promoted the show, has drawn on the rest of the territories to help bolster this show. It was to each of the territories sending their best guys to compete. So Florida had their guys in there, and Kansas City had their guys in there, and World Wrestling Caribbean, Puerto Rico had their guys coming in as well. So it was a conglomerate of superstars, which Vince doesn't have access to that because he's a one-man company, a one-town company, if you want to call it that. So it's maybe not quite the roster size, but what Vince does have is he has the connections. He's got the promotional know-how. He's got the television product already starting to boom, and he's got connections in the entertainment industry to help foster the growth, of which, as I was doing my prep, there's a couple of little tidbits that open the doors that I didn't realize happened in late March, early April. But if you've got WrestleMania in April, it really opens the doors that some of the celebrity connections may actually still be available too, because that's what Vince was working towards.
Correct. And you're about to build a major star.
Yes.
And this is my suggestion for the beginning. I'm going to need your help with the undercard because, again, I don't know. You have a what's the word I'm thinking of? You have a inside track on the. So I'm gonna rely on you to keep me honest. So immediately. You knew I was going to do this too. You're knowing me pretty well, Dave. immediately for my main event, this is where I put the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan. So we're gonna say this. What's the date for this show? What do you think? Do we do it in March or do we do it in April?
I think if you aimed for early April, it gives you time to build, because Hogan, if you're not putting the belt on Hogan in January, Hogan arrived at the company right before Christmas. He's on television from the beginning of January. So Hogan has only just shown up in January. And if you're not putting the belt on him at that January Madison Square Garden, and you want to build if you want to hold that title change off and build to it, I think you're going to want more than putting it on in, say, mid-March and only maybe having 6 to 8 weeks. It gives you an extra month then to really, because you've got to do something with Hogan to get the fans wanting him to take down Sheik. Because watching the product, they did this transition, they put the belt on Hogan, and then they marketed Hogan to the moon from the beginning. And he's the champ, he's coming to your territory, he's a superhero, he's a star. He beat Sheik straight away. What a great man he is. You've got this marketing tool being used to pump Hogan from the end of January. If you haven't got the belt on Hogan, you've got to carry it a bit further. You've got to build the story that people want. You want the anticipation. You need it to the point that people are going to buy the show to see it happen. And so I don't think Sheik can be a champion then for only a few more weeks. You want to have Sheik doing things that are going to make you want to buy the show, that make you want to buy this event.
Well, they had a show on April 23rd. Let me see what day of the week that is, because the show needs to be on a Sunday. So I'm trying to see what date, April 23rd.
The early ones on like a Monday?
They did used to have them on a Monday, so I just want to make sure. April 23rd, 1984. I'm Googling it. Day of the week. It was a Monday. So do we do the date? So we just do the day before. So our WrestleMania 1984 would be on April 22nd. So that gives us, you still do a January 23rd house show. You do a February 20th house show. You have a March 25th house show. And then you have April 22nd for WrestleMania. And obviously you have shows in between, Boston, Maple Leaf Gardens, all the hot spots, of course. So here's my build for the main event. Tell me what you think. So Hogan arrives, big deal. It's fine, he's there. Backlund still beats Sheik in December of 83.
So it still loses to Sheik, you mean?
I mean, he loses, I'm sorry. Still loses to Sheik. He does it there, okay? January 23rd, 84. You have a battle royal, kind of like a Royal Rumble, but we'll do a battle royal, to determine who will get a future world title shot. We haven't really decided whether there's going to be a WrestleMania yet or not. I'm being coy
that
here.
Was a common occurrence that battle royals would be held and the winner would get a shot at the next time they were in town. That was quite common.
It was. So we do that, and Hulk Hogan wins this battle royal. Meanwhile, Sheik and Backlund have a rematch in January, and
I think in the rematch, Sheik needs to. I don't think he needs to win the match. I think he loses by DQ when he just assaults Backlund. He bloodies him. He brings out the blood. He leaves Backlund an absolute mess.
Yep. And February.
And perhaps at the end, and tied in with that, and so I'm going to bring a couple of things to tie in with that, because you've had Hogan win the Battle Royal, so Hogan is going to come out to help Backlund at the end of the night.
Right.
But the other one that I would throw in there as a little bit of a buffer, over the course of January, February, the company began so I'm going to hold this off. Hogan comes out to help him, to help Backlund. So he's won the Battle Royal. Now he's come out to help Backlund when Sheik's left him a bloody mess. I think there's your January Madison Square Garden show.
Okay. We move to February, and maybe that is the announcement that on April 22nd, we will have our first historic WrestleMania show. And on that night, the Iron Sheik will defend the World Wrestling Federation title against Hulk Hogan. Or, Fink will do it in his Fink voice. The World Wrestling Federation Championship. And they do like an in-ring thing, and then maybe they brawl or whatever. Following month.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I like to hit the following month before I add in.
Okay. March. We have a tag. Sheik and we could say Slaughter because he is still a heel.
Oh, nice. This is okay. So this is where I think we can play where I was thinking. Slaughter's face turn happens in February of '84. They actually started building it in late January before Sheik had lost the title. Sheik was doing a lot of anti-American stuff, and Slaughter was still the heel, but you could see he was starting to play into the patriotism. In February, they went full on. There's a confrontation between Sheik and Slaughter on Championship Wrestling. So my suggestion is that could start building on TV. Slaughter starts his face turn. He's taking offense to what's being said, and he starts to, he's bringing the flag to the ring and saluting the flag. He still wrestled with quite strong heel tendencies. He still beat guys up like a heel would, but he was starting to get cheered because he was bringing the flag to the ring and he was saluting the flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And there was a big brawl on Championship Wrestling, but I think you could split it up, because when they announced WrestleMania and you've got Sheik and Hogan, maybe they've got them in the ring, maybe they have to sign the contract, whatever. Instead of the brawl, maybe Sheik beats down Hogan and just does a beat down. And it's Sergeant Slaughter who comes out to assist Hogan at the end, not to chase off Sheik, because I think then that takes the focus off of Hogan being the front man for the story. But if you have Slaughter come out to attend to Hulk Hogan, you've got that impression that Slaughter's becoming the babyface now. And then you open the door to have a tag match the next month.
I like that. I do like that. So instead of Backlund as Hogan's partner, you do Slaughter as Hogan's partner?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's Sheik's partner?
Well, Where do you go? Who do you want? That really is the question. There's a lot of
Dr.
guys
D?
in. I was going to say, there's a lot of guys in there. David Schultz was getting a big push at the time, and probably would be the best option to have in the corner. Another option could be Valentine had just returned to the company as well. You could have him wrestle with Sheik. There's a couple of thoughts. I think you would want to avoid. You need to avoid Piper at this point. I wouldn't have Piper in the ring. Another option could be the role the Samoans were playing, and maybe you actually had 3 Samoans at the time. You had Afa and Sika, and Samu was actually teaming with them as well. Maybe you have Samu team with Sheik as a foreigner. And because Slaughter's, both Hogan and Slaughter's, Hogan's return to the company was in a tag match with Backlund against the Samoans. And part of Slaughter's babyface turn was he was in a 6-man match at MSG where his partners were the Samoans, and he was against I think Putski was one. I think it was Rocky Johnson, Tony Atlas, and Ivan Putski were the opponents. And Afa and Sika bailed on him, left him, and at the end of the match, he shook hands with the other guys as sort of part of his face turn. I think that was the end of February in the Madison Square Garden. So the Samoans have played a big role in both Hogan and Slaughter's changes. Hogan's arrival, Slaughter's face turn. So maybe one of the Samoans teams with the Sheik. Maybe multiple. Maybe Afa and Sika. Maybe it's a 3-on-2.
Because for me, ultimately, in that match, Sheik beats Hogan in the tag.
Oh.
And then maybe after the match, puts him in the camel clutch for like 5 minutes. Busts his back up a little bit.
Yeah. If you did it as a handicap style, 3-on-2, that would allow the two Samoans to keep Slaughter at bay while Sheik beats up on Hogan.
What a hot main event that is, though, huh? Ooh. Sheik and the Samoans against Hogan and Slaughter. They both come out with American flags. Oh, my God. Fucking place would lose their shit. Yeah. Okay. So the Samoans and Slaughter brawl, and they're out in the crowd. Place is going nuts. Cops everywhere, you know. Meanwhile, in the ring, Freddie Blassie, the Ayatollah Blassie, gives Sheik his cane, smacks Hogan in the face with it, bloodies him open, pins him, and then puts him in the camel clutch for like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And Slaughter and Hogan has to be taken out on a stretcher. I don't know about that. Maybe we don't want to make him too weak. Hogan will walk out under his own power, but he is in a lot of pain. And then we get some vignettes. And that brings us to April 22nd. Hogan comes out with the rib tape or whatever. And these two do not wrestle for 5 minutes. We're talking a good 13, 14 minutes. And Hogan wins his first world title.
I think the build makes it work. I think the build gets people to want to see Hogan take down Sheik.
I think so too. I think the place will be nuclear.
Yeah.
I think we need to take advantage. What I think didn't happen, because I know he was merely a transitional champion, but what didn't happen was we didn't get enough like good heel Sheik to Hogan, because he was just there to lose to him. That was the sad part.
I like that.
All right.
That's good.
Okay.
So there's our main event. There's our main event.
All right. So Hogan and Sheik for the world title. Yep.
Yep. and considering the build we've just talked about, here's our second match, or at least the second match we can announce. Because Sergeant Slaughter has just had a brawl, been held off, couldn't help Hogan because of the Samoans. So Slaughter will be in a tag team match against the Samoans, and his partner. By April, in late March, we get the formation of the Cobra Corps in WWF. So his partner can be young Terry Daniels, who was inducted into the Cobra Corps, and they were building as sort of a Slaughter protege in March, April '84. So Slaughter and Terry Daniels face off against the Samoans. Slaughter can win that, and then after Sheik loses to Hogan, Sheik turns his attention to Sergeant Slaughter, and they can go on their merry way.
I forgot about Terry Daniels. See, that's why I need you, because I totally forgot about Terry Daniels.
And I've only got him there because we've built a scenario there where you've held Slaughter away from Sheik, but you've turned him babyface, and that March match we had with the Samoans, it's sort of that flow-on effect. That's what you would do with the Samoans then. And we needed a match for the Samoans anyway.
Now, obviously, we have to talk not the elephant in the room, but so obviously, Piper debuts he's there in January. Orndorff makes his debut in January. Now, in our universe, Dave, is Piper still hurt?
So, by April, Piper was back in the ring.
Okay.
He started competing in February, predominantly in some tag matches, but he was in the ring by April. And I've got a match I want to throw out there for you, just because it actually happened around this time period at Madison Square Garden. And it will allow us to not just use Piper, but also, okay. So the March 25 show in the real world, had this match on it. Andre the Giant and Jimmy Snuka wrestled Roddy Piper and David Schultz in a tag match. During the match, Andre had to be helped backstage after Piper busted his head open using a foreign object. Snuka agreed the match should be handicap and continued, and then Andre returns at the back end of the match, heavily bandaged, basically chases Piper and Schultz bail from the ring in fear, and Andre and that's the end of the match. Why not just put that at WrestleMania?
Okay.
Because also around this time period, you had Piper's hit, where Piper attacked Jimmy Snuka. The end of March, that was filmed.
Mm-hmm.
You start tying everything together. It really is a backdrop for the commencement of the Piper-Jimmy Snuka feud, but it gets Andre on the card, because my big concern was, how do you get Andre on the card?
I was just thinking that too.
But if you do it this way, you get Andre on the card, you are able to build the Jimmy Snuka Piper storyline, which has just commenced, and it gets 4 of your big players all on in one match. And that match was actually, they ended up putting that on. That's on Roddy Piper's Greatest Hits DVD. It's a fun match. It's a fun little match.
So Piper and Dr. D, you are correct. So Roddy Piper and David Schultz versus Andre. Now, in our alternate universe, Dave, we have Andre and Snuka teaming 2 years in a row. But I have no problem with that.
It's all coincidence.
Nope. But it all. I have no problem with that. Totally
And
have
of
no
course,
problem.
in our alternate, this is a separate alternate universe to the WrestleMania.
That is
1
true.
done.
That is true.
So
you and I have the
they
power.
don't exist-
Yes.
Yeah, they don't exist in the same universe.
No, you and I have the power to open up multiple universi. So, all right. Now, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas are still your tag team champions.
I would put them against the team that have arrived at the company. They've only just appeared on regular television, but they've actually been appearing in the Kiel Auditorium and for a few months, and they are where the tag direction will be going shortly, and that is the team we referenced them earlier on our program today: Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch.
Love them. Oh my God, I love them.
They won the titles a couple of months later.
Right.
Now, with Hogan winning the title here, you don't necessarily have to take the belts off Johnson Atlas yet. This could end up as this could be a double DQ or a double count out. These guys could just brawl everywhere to open the door to set the stage for a rematch where Adonis and Murdoch win the belts.
Right. Yeah, no, you don't need to change the titles here. No, of course not.
And I'll tell you what, you watch those early Adonis Murdoch matches in early '84. They are brutal. I've heard people talk about, imagine, a little bit of sort of extreme in, ECW style in some wrestlers in the early days. Like they talk about funk and all that. Adonis and Murdoch were brutalizing guys, throwing guys out of the ring, beating, doing the slams and the suplexes on the floor, hitting them with chairs. Their matches were the early form of extreme wrestling.
Yes. Yep. I totally agree. And their promos, they were so obnoxious. Oh, they were so great. They were so great. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that can end in a nice battle. That can end in a nice battle that can be used as a catalyst for future matches. And like I said, eventually you could see them winning the tag titles. Our Intercontinental Champion is Tito. He won it in February, I think. Right? I think he won it in February from Morocco. Do we have a rematch?
I think so.
Okay. Because Morocco's still pretty hot as a heel. Tito's crazy over. I wouldn't have him drop the belt already. Any type of stip or just a regular match? What do you think?
Just a regular match.
Okay. All right. Now, looking at the rest of the roster from this group.
There's some key players that we need to find matches for.
Okay.
Two of them, I've referenced these guys already. Paul Orndorff and Greg the Hammer Valentine both need matches. They were being heavily featured. Valentine and Orndorff had returned in, I think it was November, and was being managed by Roddy Piper since January. And Valentine has come back in late January, being managed by Captain Lou. So I think both of these guys need to be featured. Now, looking at possible options, there is a babyface who I think needs to be slotted in somewhere, and that's none other than our former world champion, Bob Backlund. So what if Bob Backlund faced off against either Valentine or Paul Orndorff?
Ooh. Okay.
And maybe we put him against the Hammer, because the Hammer was managed by Captain Lou.
Correct.
And I think we want to make use of Captain Lou in more ways than just managing Greg Valentine.
Right.
So if this is our match, Backlund versus Valentine, I want to create a backdrop, because I mentioned earlier that Vince was starting his outreach to the celebrities. It was actually at the end of March 1984 on television where Captain Lou, there was a Piper's Pit where Captain Lou appears, and on the show, Captain Lou is talking about how he has been managing Cyndi Lauper, and he has led her to her success with the Girls Just Want to Have Fun music video.
Yep.
So this is when the Cyndi Lauper rock and roll wrestling connection begins. And you know that they're starting this talk because they've already planned the storyline. So my suggestion is, if we're showing this in April, Captain Lou has started that talk. At ringside for this match is Cyndi Lauper with David Wolf. They are at ringside. Captain Lou comes out with Greg Valentine and maybe even points her out. There's Cyndi Lauper, and maybe he goes over to shake a hand, and they don't want to bar him. They don't want anything to do with him. Backlund comes out. Backlund and Valentine are fighting, and Captain Lou keeps getting distracted by Cyndi Lauper. He keeps wanting to talk to her. Roddy had sort of said that he should bring her on, he would get her on Piper's Pit. So maybe Captain Lou is actually asking, Cyndi, you're not returning my calls. I promised I'd have you on Piper's Pit. That can all be picked up by the ringside camera. And at some point, Cyndi Lauper slaps him. And this causes a distraction to the Hammer in ring. And with the Hammer temporarily distracted, Bob Backlund rolls him up, either a small package or a inside cradle or something, a reverse roll up from behind, and Backlund gets the 3 count on Greg Valentine. Our former champion stands tall, but we are continuing the Cyndi Lauper, Captain Lou angle. And it also creates the environment, because Greg Valentine, not long after WrestleMania, they create the Dream Team with Greg Hammer ends up hooking up with Jimmy Hart not long after this.
Yep.
So it creates the environment where maybe Valentine wants a different manager who's going to focus on him and not as a negative on Captain Lou, but just as you've got your own stuff to deal with, and let me get someone who can help me get a title shot.
I like that. It gives, it frustrates Valentine to be like, listen, I need to focus on this. My goal is to go after Tito. You got other crap to do. Sell my contract to Jimmy, and he'll give you a cut or some heel shenanigans. Yeah, I like that idea, and I think that's a good match. I think it'll be a great match, actually.
Yeah. Valentine in '84, when I've been watching, he was still so fit. Like, he hadn't started to bulk up the way he did in sort of '86, '87. He was still really trim, and he was fantastic in the ring. And he's coming on the heels of that amazing storyline with Roddy Piper at the dog collar match at Starrcade. It was just Yeah, it really was probably the best conditioning the Hammer was ever in. I think is that early '84 time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And he was good till probably 88, and then started to kind of show his age. Okay. That's
That
6
gets us
matches.
Valentine in the ring.
Yep.
So our other key player who's been getting a lot of focus has been Paul Orndorff. He needs a match. How about this? As I mentioned, Orndorff was being managed by Roddy Piper on television. That's what they'd done. And another backstory that was starting to brew for Roddy Piper. We talked about how you had the snooker element. Well, snooker had a television family member, not a real family member, but a television family member who was making appearances on Championship Wrestling at this point as well. And that's a very young wrestler by the name of the Tonga Kid.
Yes.
What if Orndorff beats the crap out of the Tonga Kid?
I like that.
With Piper there with him.
So because it does kind of correlate to the tag. You know, because the tag with Piper and Dr. D against Andre and Snuka.
Yep.
Because that feud was brewing anyway. I like that. Tonga Kid versus maybe pile drives him on the concrete.
Oh yeah.
Pulls back the why am I brain farting? The padding.
Well, take it a step back. Tonga Kid, Orndorff maybe dominates a lot of the match. Tonga Kid starts to make a comeback. He's got Orndorff down, and he goes to the ropes to maybe land a headbutt or whatever, and Piper trips him. Tonga Kid comes out of the ring after Piper. Orndorff rolls out, attacks him from behind. They do a couple of stomps, and then I'll drive him on the outside.
Yeah. That I think that would work. That would get the crowd all fired up and pissed off, and kind of get you ready for the tag, because the tag wouldn't have happened yet. So
you'd have this match like first or second, probably second on the night.
Yes. And then you have the tag maybe like third to last.
Yeah.
And Piper can, start already jaw-jacking with Hogan a little bit backstage, maybe kind of build to something down the line, So, all right. Yeah, I like that. Maybe we open with Tito Morocco, and then maybe do Tonga Orndorff, the tag title with Adonis and Murdoch, then to Piper Schultz, then to Slaughter, Terry Daniels, and the Samoans, and then, of course, Sheik Hogan. We got 7 matches. Do we have more? We've covered a decent amount of the roster.
There's one more I think we could put on there. Again, guys who've just started being featured, or one guy who just started to get a bit more feature on television at this time was the future opponent of Andre the Giant, and that's Big John Studd. And
yes,
maybe you have Studd get a victory over someone like Ivan Putski. I love beating down Ivan Putski. I really feel fun. But Putski was all over television in '84. It's real hard to watch. It's really reminiscent of that sort of early '90s. You saw a lot of Tito Santana, and he won against the the jobbers, and then he lost against everyone else. And that really feels the role that Ivan Putski was playing in '84. So I think Ivan Putski would be the perfect person for Big John Studd to beat.
Right. I like that idea because I don't love Ivan Putski either. Yeah, I like that. I'm putting that down. Big John Studd versus Ivan Putski. And of course, Putski will probably cause a stink backstage, but it's time for you to start putting guys over.
Yeah.
While you're all roided up and old. All right. That's an eight match card. Here's what we got. Big John Studd versus Ivan Putski. The Tonka Kid against Paul Orndorff. The Hammer Greg Valentine against Bob Backlund. Tito Santana against the Magnificent Rocco in a rematch for the Intercontinental title. For the tag team titles, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, the Soul Patrol, against Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch, the North-South Connection. Roddy Piper and Dr. D. David Schultz take on Andre the Giant and Jimmy Snuka. Sergeant Slaughter and Terry Daniels against the Wild Samoans. And in the main event, nuclear as it will be, the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan for the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship. I do like, Dave, how 1984 Vince had the roster very tight. There wasn't a lot of because I'm looking at house shows. You had Mass Superstar and the guys like Tony Gurria and all those kind of guys. Like, you're not going to get them on the show. Jose Luis Rivera, all the jobbers. B. Brian Blair's there pre Killer Bees.
Yeah, B. Brian Blair had just debuted. They'd actually started teaming him with Tony Gurria, and I felt sorry for him because you just could see Gurria he wasn't interested. He was done.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Huh. I think it's a good card, and just to have add a bit of spice. Talked about Cyndi Lauper being in the crowd. Maybe you have a couple of other celebrities in the crowd. Maybe one celebrity sitting at ringside might be the star of the A-Team, Mr. T. Who when Hogan wins his title and he's celebrating, maybe he goes out of the ring and gives Mr. T a big hug in celebration of winning the World Championship.
I approve. I like that. I like that idea. Okay. Dave, you're totally going into the whole celebrity. You're definitely a Vince Jr. disciple after Vince Senior sells.
Yeah. Look, I think the big thing, as I said earlier today in this program, part of the big thing at the push of the WrestleManias was the desire to attract the casual fan, and you attract the casual fan with celebrity. You need people that they're going to want to see in a different environment. If you're not used to watching wrestling, if you've never watched it, what's going to make you watch it for the first time? Telling everyone Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik, that's going to get the wrestling fans in.
Right.
But if you say on this show, and maybe take it a step further. Maybe Mr. T is the guest ring announcer. It was that celebrity attraction. Mr. T is going to be our guest ring announcer. He's going to be on the show. You're going to hear him talk. You're going to hear him in the microphone. Cyndi Lauper's at ringside. Maybe, they went. Maybe you get Muhammad Ali, like they did it for the original WrestleMania. Maybe you get Muhammad Ali in as the guest timekeeper. Those celebrities that bring the eyes. That's what you want, and that's why. Yeah, I've been playing it up a little bit tonight, but I think that's what it was about. That's what drew the eyes of the casual fan. I mean, Vince turned it into a monster business, and I honestly believe if he didn't have those celebrities in that 85 time period with WrestleMania, I don't think it would have worked.
No, you might be right. You're probably right. No, I agree with you. You're probably right. Because you had to bring in and that's what he wanted. He wanted to bring in the casual fan. The diehards weren't going anywhere. Vince also wanted to make he also wanted to make the audience younger. Vince, his dad obviously was catering. The old timers were there, the Bruno fans, the Pedro fans, that. But Vince is like, I'm done with them. I want kids here, and I want women here. No pun intended. I think he wanted to bring in, the younger audience because they're the ones that ultimately are going to be fans for longer. You open up the Felt Forum for our show, you're talking almost 30,000.
Yeah.
That's what we want. This, Dave, is an incredible card. You have done your homework, sir.
I think we've done a good job together on this one.
Yes, I think we did. I think we like that. Take a listen and just go back and just listen to our 3 cards. I love all of them. I love our WrestleMania 84. I love our WrestleMania 1. Our retooled Mania 1 is damn good, I have to say. And I actually really like our WrestleMania 9. I think people would legitimately enjoy that show better than the real one.
Yeah.
I really do. Oh man. Well, that folks, will just about wrap it up for a wonderful, our 3rd annual, I guess, WrestleMania journeys through the Looking Glass. Dave, thank you. You're the greatest as always. I always enjoy doing this show with you. Where can everyone find you?
If you want to hear a bit more of me, have a listen to the Criscuolo episodes on the North-South network. I'm a regular attender on regular feature on that. We're currently doing the journey between WrestleMania 5 and SummerSlam 89. So there's about 2 episodes on that journey. So that's going to be fun.
One of my favorite times. One of my favorite times.
A couple of matches I'm reviewing in there that I'm very excited about. So that's going to be, it's right in my wheelhouse. I've got one of my all-time favorite people who know me. You get one of the matches I get, you understand I'm marking out big time because I've got 2 of my favorite teams of all time.
Oh,
so it's
love it.
It's gonna be fun. So yeah, you can have a listen on there and just reach out to me. You can send me messages through Facebook. I'd love to hear from you.
You can follow me on my socials. You guys know all they are at this point. Busy week coming up. Not only is this on, there'll be a new episode of Main Event later this week. I'm actually going to be on the North-South this week. Ryan Gray and I are going to continue. Maybe I shouldn't say it. I'll let them promote it. But I'm going to be on the Greatest WrestleMania Performer Countdown. Jeez, I wonder who I'm going to do.
As am I. I'm also going to be on there. My one drops this Sunday. So I've got the number 15 ranked competitor. So I'm not going to spoil it either.
Okay.
Who are you doing, Scott? Yours. I'm really struggling to think who they might ask you to talk about in WrestleMania history with. I've worked it out. You're doing Earthquake.
Yep. I am. I am doing Earthquake. You are exactly right. I am doing Earthquake. Gonna do oh boy. Maybe I'll do a little Bushwhackers too. Maybe I'll do a combo. They're tied really. So anyway, check me out. I'll be over on the North-South for that. But of course I'm here. Place Be Podcast will be returning. We had a little, due to life things, we had to take a mild hiatus, not a long hiatus, just a break in the action. But JR and I will be back with new episodes coming up this month. And yeah, just stay with us. We got a lot of great stuff. I thank my man Luke Jennings. I love Luke. He does 3 shows on this network. He does the Memphis Continental Wrestling Cast, 4 shows actually. The Monday Night Project, which he alternates with Hamburg All Stars, and of course he also does do Pure Riso Passion. So I love Luke. The guy's awesome. And I'm trying to get him on a pod that I'm on, but he's another one like Dave that's in another universe. So I have to line the time zone up. But But I'm going to do a show with him. Maybe I'll get him on main event. That should be fun. Dave, always a pleasure. Everyone, we'll talk to you, of course, next month. We'll figure out something cool for April. But for now, really enjoy alternate WrestleManias through the looking glass.